of many people, one thing that was just getting onto the radar of constitutionalists was whether Her Majesty might, to some greater or lesser degree, get dragged into a constitutional crisis. There was a moment maybe late last night, early this morning, before Boris Johnson resigned as leader of the Conservative Party and in time Prime Minister as well, that people were just beginning to think it might take an intervention from the palace to move things along. Fanciful, maybe. Let's turn to Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, the royal broadcaster and commentator. Rafe, welcome to you. Do you think at the palace they were pulling dusty volumes down from the bookshelves and having meetings, or was it never really going to come to that?
No, there was never any chance of that. I think there are pretty established roles that are there, and the Conservative Party, the Parliamentary Party, was fully able to take control of the situation. There was no immediate urgency to that situation, and of course, even now, there's no actual constitutional precedent for having, say, an interim prime minister, for example. We don't even actually know what is officially supposed to happen when the prime minister dies. In 1953, when Churchill had a stroke, his private secretary had brief discussions, but he recovered from that. It wasn't actually until Boris Johnson went into hospital with COVID that we saw the first sort of delegation. So if there was a constitutional convention, it was actually established for the first time with Boris Johnson, with Dominic Raab. But the Prime Minister's role really is to ensure that there's a smooth transition of power. Nobody questioned Theresa May when she left office 6 weeks or so after she announced she was going to resign. David Cameron would have had an even longer period as Prime Minister, having announced his resignation, had Andrea Leadsom not left the contest, giving a coronation to Theresa May. So there's no precedent for a Prime Minister to step down in the manner that some of the MPs and indeed the Labour Party are calling for.
Rafe, you know I agree with you on almost everything, but just on your point that there was no pressing urgency and no ever likelihood of the palace having to look at this. I mean, I'm looking at a former cabinet minister like Julian Smith this morning, making parallels with the situation faced by Donald Trump. It felt like for a while like the palace at least might need to look at this if Boris really was hanging on by every fingernail.
Well, of course, the Queen has the right to advise and to warn, and so whether Her Majesty would have chosen to do that, or whether indeed she may choose to do that at their next meeting, we'll never know, but we're not privy to those discussions. But, you know, it's up. The mechanism exists within the parliamentary Tory party to get rid of the Prime Minister by simply changing the rules. And given that that was going to happen on Monday, once the new executive were elected, there was never any chance that the Queen would be involved in that in any capacity. The last time a monarch has dismissed a Prime Minister was in 1834, when William IV got rid of Lord Melbourne. And then in 1975 in Australia, you may remember, Gough Whitlam was dismissed by the Australian Governor-General. But those are they're called reserve powers because they're there after every other option has been exhausted, and we have exhausted every option.
Rafe, as ever, thanks so much for your expertise. Really appreciate it.